Okay, well, I'll introduce our, our third and final speaker then. Dr. Jean Marie Place is a maternal and child health researcher at Ball State University. She studies adverse experiences in a woman's reproductive life, particularly issues in the perinatal period, such as infertility, postpartum depression, sexual violence, and infant mortality. She also examines fertility awareness among young people and prenatal care models. Her work has centered on exploring these issues in low resource contexts, including Mexico, Guatemala, and immigrant populations in the United States. Dr. Place.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to be here. I'm grateful to Muncie Resists to have been invited to be a speaker for this Real Choice event. I wanted to start with a story. When I was a college student, a professor of mine invited me to tag along to a roundtable discussion. As is the tradition, everyone took turns introducing themselves. There were medical doctors, PhDs, well-known activists, and other leaders, experts, and professionals with a host of dizzying titles and terminal degrees. Everyone was standing up, stating their name, and sharing a brief, professional, and impressive biography. When it came to my professor's turn, she stood up and said, "Hi, I'm Debbie." She turned to me and called me by name too. Then, bypassing her extensive list of titles, she simply said, "We're feminists." It was the first time I remember conceptualizing myself as a feminist. My professor claimed, no, actually she embraced her self-actualization as a feminist. It represented the height of what she believed and had achieved. Melinda Gates, in her book, The Moment of Lift, wrote, "Being a feminist means believing that every woman should be able to use her voice and pursue her potential, and that women and men should all work together to take down the barriers and end the biases that still hold women back." Today, I am glad because I can use my voice as a feminist in a small way to advance reproductive health in our community. What can we do to take down the barriers and end the biases that still hold women back? I believe one answer is to listen, really listen to women. As a qualitative health researcher, I conduct interviews with people and try to find patterns in the stories they share. These patterns become data, and we can draw conclusions based on the themes we hear across varied life experiences. In my career, I have had the immense privilege of sitting in front of many women and asking them to share their story with me. Whether they are suffering silently with postpartum depression, or if they have just experienced a failed IVF cycle when trying to conceive, whether they are teenage girls who are having sex but don't want to get pregnant and aren't sure what to do, or women who have abused drugs during pregnancy and are now in recovery with a medically fragile newborn in their arms. It never ceases to amaze me what women will share when given the chance. For example, listen to how a selection of women have described to me their experience with postpartum depression. Shut off from the world, empty, tied in a knot, desperate, useless, frozen, powerless. Now listen to what these women were told to do. One woman I interviewed reflected on counsel she received from her mother-in-law. "My mother-in-law says, it's better to think of your children. Don't think about yourself, think about them." Another woman told me, "My sisters tell me I have to make an effort for my little girl." The message these women received from those closest to them was to pull yourself up so you can take care of your child. I am struck by the dissonance between how these women described the horrifying experience of severe depression and the platitudes offered in return. Particularly, I find it fascinating that women's recovery was encouraged, not for her own well-being, but because she was needed to care for someone else. It reminds me of Debbie, my dear professor who saw, labeled, and nurtured the feminist inside of me. In correcting my papers, she would strike out the word mother if I used it as a synonym for woman in the text. "She is a woman first. Refer to her as a woman, not a mother," Debbie would write in the margins. Yeah. Similarly, these women who shared their stories with me, they deserve to be well, not because they are mothers to small children, but because they are women. because they alone deserve to be listened to, heard, and their expressed needs should be addressed. It is an important reminder that women are first, always, and fundamentally women, as opposed to the service roles we would have them play. Sitting in front of another woman, this time a woman in recovery from substance use disorders, she described becoming addicted to meth as an 11-year-old girl when her father, himself addicted, introduced her to the substance. I remember this piece of information because it shocked me. So different was her experience of growing up to mine. My job in that moment as a researcher was to listen, ask questions, and then listen some more. So it was a humbling pursuit of one question after another in a journey to contextualize this now 22-year-old woman bouncing a baby on her lap. I remember thinking, my journey is not her journey. My solutions may not be her solutions. What works for me may not work for her. But as Audre Lorde says, even when her shackles are very different from my own, I have an obligation to listen to how she visualizes her own path and then help her on that path so she can pursue what is right for her. Audre Lorde says, I am not free while any woman is unfree. I take this to mean that every woman's journey is her own, but we help each other on our respective paths. We certainly shouldn't herd everyone onto the same path or limit the available ways women might want to walk. Once you've heard their story, I believe Mr. Rogers has said, you can learn to love anyone. I would add that once we've heard their story, we might also learn to trust them. We can respect the self-determination they make for their lives, even if it is different than what we might choose. If we listened more intently to women, we might lower the number of women who die from complications of giving birth, hemorrhage, and infection, two conditions that are entirely treatable. Women of color are 3 to 4 times more likely than white women to die from pregnancy-related complications. One contributing factor is a medical system that does not take Black women's pain seriously. There is a long history of women whose health concerns have been systemically minimized or dismissed. We can save these women. The first step is to listen to them. If we listened more intently to women, we might hear them say, for any variety of reasons, that they cannot bring a pregnancy to term, that termination is the right choice for them. If we are committed to walking alongside women on their own paths, we trust them if they want to terminate a pregnancy. We can save these women too from dying in unsafe abortion procedures. If we listened more intently to women, we will hear them talk about the need for contraceptive access. In my own work, young teenage women have told me that when they have sought information on contraceptives, they have felt judged. Feeling judged is threatening. It undermines their self-efficacy, and it acts as a barrier to service. It also doesn't stop them from having sex. It will just drive them away from the services they need to protect themselves, leading to higher rates of unintended pregnancies and sexually transmitted infections, including HIV. We can save these women too. It starts with listening to them. If we listened more intently to women, we will believe them when they tell us they have experienced a sexual assault, not because we encourage a presumption of guilt, but as Rebecca Traister writes, because we should encourage them to speak more and listen more seriously when they talk. An interview we conducted with one woman in Guatemala revealed that after a sexual assault, she visited a health clinic only to sit unattended and bleeding in a waiting room chair for 2 hours before leaving the facility without having been seen. I often think of her in my work, wondering what happened in the aftermath of her no's that went ignored and her pleas for help going unanswered. So thank you for listening to my thoughts this evening. I am ending with adding my voice to other feminists who call for all people everywhere to respect women, to listen to them, and above all, to not deceive them. Whether or not we are mothers or not, sisters, aunts, whether we identify as feminists or not, able-bodied or not, transgender or not, no matter our marital, employment, or socioeconomic status, we are women, worthy and deserving of attention, and demanding to be listened to. Thank you.